One of the better examples, Lev, of the white side of this opening was the recent candidates match 1995 between Anatoly Karpov and Boris Gelfand of the Soviet Union. In this game, Karpov was able to show the ideas that you talked about, keeping the queens on for white and then trying to attack the king side. This game opened d4.
And you were present there?
Yes, actually I was Karpov's second during this match.
So you observed it firsthand, so to speak.
And the move order followed pretty much the same as your game with Hartison. b5, c takes, a6, b takes a6. Gelfand played your improved move order with g6, knight c3, bishop takes a6. Now Karpov played e4 immediately.
Basically was a transposition.
After takes, king takes, d6,
To stop e5.
g3, bishop here, king up, castles, knight f3, knight bd7.
Our position with some transposition, yes.
Yes. Now after h3, one of the ideas you mentioned in your game with Hartison that black can play is the idea with rook a6. And this is in fact what Gelfand played.
One of modern ideas, I guess, developed by John Fedorovich from Bronx.
So after rook a6, he played
Bishop g5 or rook e1?
He did in fact play bishop g5, and this was considered, in this exact position, of course, this was considered a novelty at the time. And now, here again we have this debatable moment. Gelfand in the game played h6, and of course, at the time, the seconds, myself, Pagayats, and Epushin, we were a little worried because we've seen, so many games where white lost the white side of this. But Karpov played bishop back to d2, and then later he labeled h6 as a slight weakness.
Yes, because his idea was to protect this knight, so he would be able later to play b3.
So in this exact case, he considered it a slight weakness.
Well, perhaps black should play maybe immediately queen a8 and rook b8, but this is matter of opinion. And again, someone who doesn't like this game can try to follow my game with queen b6, or again may deviate from Gelfand not to play h6. Karpov certainly has great positional understanding, and maybe play queen a8 and rook b8 immediately.
So in the game, he played queen a8 only after h6, and then after rook e1, he played rook b8. Now, one possible place for improvement is that having put the queen on a8 where it's lined up against the king, is in later games, black was very successful with the move e6.
Which makes certainly sense, because it's good to be able to switch plans. Now when white, in a way, lost some tempers on move h3, for instance, and black queen is so well placed again on this long diagonal, maybe it could make sense to open this diagonal. In this case, rook is better placed on f8, because if a file would be open, rook would be aimed against white knight. So it probably was a room for improvement here. But it's possible to understand Gelfand, who wanted to follow his original plan, and really banker players, as a rule, would hate to destruct their nice structure. They would do it only if they can reap immediate benefits. So I can perfectly understand Gelfand.
So after rook b8, the pawn needs to be defended. And like you said, now he's able to play b3 because he's defended the knight on c3. So now he played knight e8. Okay, this threatens, of course, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, followed by rook a2, regaining the pawn. But now Karpov played rook e2. And of course, this is a type of motif that Karpov is a master at, is the lateral defense.
Indirect kind of defense, but not directly. When he takes, bishop takes, and now rook protects the pawn, yes. Kind of subtle Karpovian move, yes.
So Gelfand brings more pieces to the queen side. And now again, Karpov plays rook to c1. Lev, I must say, when I have these type of positions with white, I'm worried that this is pinned, and this is under attack, and this is loose, and so forth.
Yes,
but somehow, in the hands of Karpov, it's like magic. He manages to protect everything.
I would be also worried. In fact, immediately I don't see what he had in mind.
Well, his point was that on bishop takes, he wants to take with the rook.
And pawn on h6 is hanging. Yes, indeed. With pawn on h6, sometimes, the same way as in my game. Again, Hartison mentions that I knew in advance that rook on e2 is likely to become a target. The same way pawn on h6 is often become a target, and here Karpov kind of masterfully indirectly defends pawn on a2 by attacking pawn on h6.
So now what's interesting is Karpov actually claims that white already has a slight advantage because he already begins to have the feel that he has some...
I think he's right. Again, white has advantage. The question, of course, is that black probably still should be able to hold the game because of this resilience of black position. But white is better, no question about it.
So Gelfand played rook to a7. His idea, he wants to bring the knight to increase the pressure on the white position.
Another idea in a position like this, you may consider playing something like knight b5 exchanger, because it's not very good knight for white knight on c3. It could be another play.
Also, Lev, that makes sense to exchange before the other knight can come over and assume the blockading duties.
Exactly.
And if white avoids the exchange, then maybe you get a very strong square on d4.
On d4, right. Rook a7.
It also might be pointed out that Gelfand is not really a professional Benko Gambit player. This was a special thing. His normal defense, mainstay defense, is the King's Indian, but since he was behind in the match, he felt that he did need a sharper, more dynamic opening.
Gelfand is certainly a great player, but but Karpov is a great player as well. And in this game, Karpov happened to be on the top and really play, as we see so far, really truly excellent game.
Now Karpov played queen c2, again protecting his weak points, and after knight, Karpov played very nicely with knight a6. He played knight a4. Yes. The point being that now, on knight here, he doesn't allow the tactical mistake. Karpov is very tactically alert in this game. If he plays queen here, there's again a tactical trick with knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, and rook takes a4. Yeah. Very typical type tactical trick. And then again, the structure has been destroyed and the d pawn is weak.
Exactly.
So after knight to b4, Karpov simply removes this knight, and after rook takes, again, it would seem that the ideal plan for white is to transfer this knight over to c4, and then he would have the absolute perfect position for white. Again, like you said, not winning, but white has the upper hand. He stopped black, and then he can try to progress on the king side. Would you agree, Lev?
Well, basically yes. Basically yes, unless there's some kind of tactical tricks which we should always be alert.
Well, exactly. Karpov, in fact, did not play knight d2 because there's some possibility like rook takes here, pawn takes, and then rook b2, followed by having destroyed the pawn structure, collecting back some pawns, and suddenly all the black pieces are cooperating.
Yes, sometimes sacrifices like exchange sacrifice or even queen sacrifice is a part of Benko Gambit. You should be alert, and Karpov is certainly a great tactician, despite his age usually play became more positional, but Karpov, as I remember him as a boy, he was always good in quick play in blitz, and it usually remains with you for life, so you're very alert to tactics, because blitz is mainly tactics.
In this position, Karpov played queen d3.
So this bishop, while it's strong in a way, but it's also in certain way aims into emptiness. Karpov was able to remove his pieces and structure his play in such a way that this role of this bishop is not as great, say, as it used to be in my game.
Our friend Dr. Carl Berger referred to this as escaping the influence of the opponent's piece.
True.
In this case, the bishop is on the board, but it has no influence.
Yes, it has some influence, but not as big as he usually has, let's put it this way. I still like the bishop, but it's certainly his influence greatly diminished.
Well, now Gelfand had trouble finding a plan, so he just kind of sits back and waits. He played rook a5. Here Karpov played rook at e to c2, continuing to increase his grip on the c4 square. And now Gelfand probably began to make a mistake. In his ambition to activate this bishop and maybe put it on this diagonal to disrupt, the play for white, he played h5. And
maybe can g5 square in some cases.
Yes, and also this makes it easier
G4.
after g4 at some moment for white to open the king side.
A hook, so to speak. And because all black pieces, most of them are on the queen side, his black king side may be vulnerable to timely attack.
So in the game, after h5, rook to c4. Now, according to Karpov, black kind of needs to keep some major pieces on the board to have some chances. And now, both sides were in time trouble at this point, so we enter a period here where they just maneuver around without accomplishing a great deal. Karpov plays rook at 1 to c2, and rook at 5 to b7, and queen e2. Now this position, though, I thought was very interesting, is that this is very typical of Karpov's style that he perfected. If you notice, every piece that white has is on the light squares, and this makes a very pleasing impression.
Right.
And this is one of his real fortes, is light square controlling games. And so here, white has absolutely a clear strategical advantage. And so then we'll just show the next few moves very rapidly to show at the point where the game starts to progress. Gelfand played rook a7. Karpov played rook d2. One idea is he wants to add more protection here if he ever pushes with e5. Now he played rook a5. But we can see black has exactly the type of position that you said you don't want, where you're tied up and white is just building. Rook d1. Queen a6. Now rook d2. In this case, some possibility of rook takes here, trying to sack the exchange and use the pin, so Karpov protects his queen. Now Gelfand
On knight b6, he could have played
here
in some moment.
So he plays rook to c2, and then he goes back. Now Karpov starts to finally inch forward. He plays queen e3. He has some idea to play queen up and start to attack on this sector. So he played queen back to a8, rook d2, rook a7, rook d1, rook b5, queen e2.
I think that black at some moment,
rook b8.
now earlier, had to exchange this knight and get at least some play against those pawns, which may prevent white from activating on the king side. It's clear why Gelfand didn't want to do it. He thought this knight is bad and his knight is active and can support the king side, but this knight really is not bad because it negates the power of rook and even partly the queen.
Well, actually what now happens, Lev, is exactly that. He plays here, and now because he has the threat just to move away and sink the other knight in, Gelfand decides that if he's going to do it, this is the last chance.
Exactly.
So he played here, but now Karpov exchanged,
and played
and after
a4.
rook takes, he played a4. Exactly.
Because now the pawn is well protected by the knight. And
so now, with only 2 moves to go to time control, Gelfand played bishop to h6, trying to eliminate the knight and then undermine the pawn. However, Karpov played here, and now we begin to see Gelfand's overall plan with this h5 and bishop h6 business as he played here. Well, he's trying to undermine. But again, like you said, he's trying to attack in a sector where just his king is there. And so now Karpov played very nicely with queen g4, protecting the f4 pawn. And after takes, he didn't bother to recapture, but he played h4.
Very good, very good.
And now the point is if we draw the board in half, we'll see that in this half, you have the queen and the black king, and only a bishop to defend.
And pawns to attack, and rook just in case to come into attack as well.
Well, exactly. Then when you see the pawn wall and the space advantage, you realize that the white pieces can shift over here much quicker than the black pieces can come over. And so it's no surprise that the game ended in a rather
here, for instance, this knight holds entire queen side, while those rook doing very little. And queen can be shifted back, but, not this rook.
If you look at the point total, you have 7, 8 holding back 20 points.
Exactly.
So in the game, after queen g4, h4, h5, Gelfand started trying to bring over. He played king h7, h5. Now he brought his queen over to the king side. He could try to play queen here, but essentially, after takes and rook over, it wouldn't help. So he played here.
And to exchange queens.
Now he played rook c3, and already we can see this rook is shifting over. Now Gelfand lashed out with f5. Karpov played pawn takes, queen takes. And now, simple move, queen h4.
Well, it shows illustrates his point that white doesn't want to exchange queens.
Yes, because
he plays for attack.
He's bringing one rook here and one rook here. And some moment the knight might even come.
And those two rooks, especially this one, is totally out of play. And this rook plays marginal role in the game by protecting.
Gelfand again tried to offer the exchange of queens with queen f6, hoping that by attacking the queen and the rook, he would be able to encourage Karpov to trade queens and alleviate some of the pressure. But now Karpov played very precisely. He played rook h1, again showing the power of the file. If Gelfand exchanges queens after rook takes, his bishop is pinned, and he will not be able to unpin because the other rook will simply come over. You see?
Exactly.
And the point is, if he plays queen takes here, then Karpov had the very nice variation queen check, king here, queen check here, king here, queen takes here check, which is a little surprising because he let his king get all the way over to here. Now you don't have check here because of the queen, but you send him back with this motif.
The rook comes into game decisively, yes.
Yes. And then
Mate.
you made him from behind like this.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, it was very good example how white attack on the king side, and it also shows why black usually likes to exchange queens and bank a gambit, and why white, like this game demonstrate, like some game by Yasser Serevant with white demonstrate, prefer not to exchange queens, but rather to keep queens just in case he will give him a chance to attack.
So in the game, Lev, Gelfand played pawn takes on e4. Karpov ignored that and brought his rook over.
G3, right? Now threatens already to triple and to win the bishop.
Also, sometimes f5 and rook g6 is coming.
A lot of good ideas.
So Gelfand played rook to b4. And now just to show one idea, you know, is if he plays e3 to try and make something of his passed pawn, one very pretty variation is to play queen takes, pawn takes, knight e4, threatening knight takes pawn check. Again, this rook is totally out of the picture. Rook to here, pawn up. Again, trying to make the most. Rook here, threatening mate.
Yes.
Pawn to the 8th equals knight check.
No, can probably ignore
you simply play king here.
Yes.
And then when he goes king back, you play rook takes check.
Also called
rook
Arabian knight
and then knight takes here, you see?
If he takes on h6, would be mate on g8.
And this is a very nice mating pattern for your students, yes?
Yes, certainly very nice mating pattern, but of course position was already so good that Karpov probably could have won it differently as well, but it's nice finale, and it just shows how devastating white attack was in this moment and how hopeless black was. So Gelfand played, but I'm sure he knew that position is already lost, and it shows that white strategy did work, and black advances on the king side. Opening of the game on king side was reckless. And
so in the game, after rook takes g3, Gelfand played rook b4 just to hold on to this pawn and keep the knight out for a few moves. But now the game ended very quickly. Karpov played here, threatening simply queen g8 mate. And when the rook went back to stop queen g8 mate, Karpov simply doubled rooks the other way. And since there was no defense, pinning doesn't help because rook takes check pulls him off.
Yes, exactly. So black resigned, I think.
But now, about this game Karpov-Gelfand, in relation to the theory and the situation with the Benko Gambit, there are a few very important points to make here, Lev. First, this game does in no way refute the Gambit, but rather Karpov was, you know, a very strong positional player. It took a world-class world champion with the white pieces, playing a strategical masterpiece to defeat black's opening. Karpov was able to show some of the nicer ideas for white, putting the bishop on d2, using the light square blockade motif on c4, the idea that Lev showed of keeping the queens on in order to attack the weakened black king side. Black, for his turn, also made some mistakes. He didn't make the most of his compensation. At one moment, maybe he should play e6 to try and get some counterplay against the white pieces. And he also weakened his own king side voluntarily in some instance.
That's correct. So again, just to give put it in some perspective, first of all, speaking just about opening moves, you may try to follow my game with Herterson, where I play queen b6 instead of rook a6. Rook a6 was still a decent move. You may be careful and avoid playing h6, the move Karpov criticized. And also, you're most likely not going to meet Karpov, except if you play in simul, because Karpov usually doesn't play in open, so you wouldn't meet Karpov in the open. And even if you play Karpov, you shouldn't give up an opening because you would lose to Karpov. I mentioned it to you once, Ron, that I had such experience when as a young player, but already a young, strong player, played Karpov, who just became Grandmaster at 19, and I played a system in Sicilian defense, which I had very good results, and I lost after a long struggle with several adjournments to Karpov, and I was so disgusted that I gave away the system and began to play Lehigh defense, which basically I played successfully. Recently, when already as semi-amateur, I played in US Championship, and to avoid theoretical developing in Lehigh, I came back to my old love to the Sicilian defense, and I did pretty well in Sicilian defense. So I decided it was really not the opening which was the problem, but simply Karpov was already very good at 19. So you should not take this game as you should learn from this game, but don't be frightened. Again, you are not likely to meet Karpov or someone like Karpov.